Hello, this is Matteo Esposito for In the Loop Media. We are here in Hamilton with David Beresford, who is a character artist. I would love to ask you a few questions if that's okay with you.
Sure, absolutely.
What are your challenges when you create a new piece of art?
Well, in terms of my sort of deep focused interest in what I like to call it in terms of doing my art, I guess it started roughly around the age of 3 or 4-ish, I would imagine. I just discovered that it was one of the best ways for me to express myself,
Right.
and to sort of let go all of my negative, stressful thoughts. I just sort of developed a real interest in it for some reason. And believe it or not, I learned to draw before I learned how to speak verbally to people.
Wow. Interesting. Very interesting. That's actually quite impressive.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. My grandmother used to say, you crawl before you walk, and you walk before you talk, something like that. But that's interesting that you do before you talk, and not many people do that. So I really admire you for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, you have autism.
Yes, I was officially.
Asperger's,
I was officially diagnosed with being on the autism spectrum at the age of 9 by
Right.
doctors at Murray, brilliant man. And my whole life, growing up in my childhood and my teens, and now as a young adult, now in my mid-30s, later 30s,
Right.
it's been a big, long learning curve
Right,
for me.
right.
Like I still have my daily struggles every single day,
Right,
and my
right.
challenges I have to
Absolutely.
deal with. But it's just a big learning curve, I mean, at the end of the day, you just gotta get up early in the morning, be strong, and just deal with it.
If a young man, a young artist, would want to be you one day, what would you tell them as an inspiration?
Well, for my personal advice and something like that, I would simply say don't try to be like me exactly. I mean, I really appreciate being inspired by younger people, all kinds of different people with similar challenges. I just tell them to, but like if they wanted to achieve the same kind of goals. For example, when I was a young kid growing up, my parents and my sister especially, my whole family, they allowed me to focus on my deep focus interest in terms of doing my art, drawing and painting, but they noticed that I was sort of isolating myself a little bit too much at times, and sometimes I kind of felt like that, even though I like sort of being in my own zone, in my own world.
Right.
But they kept pushing me, Dave, you should really, go outside a little bit more, ride your bike, try making some couple friends every once in a while. So one of the things that helped me was I went to many different camps while growing up. I was placed into, into the Woodview Manor program through Hamilton, and a few different summer camps I was involved in. So I had a lot of training throughout my life. So.
Yeah. What are some of your struggles? I don't want to get personal, but what are some of your struggles that maybe a viewer out that a viewer watching this could relate to, who on the autism spectrum or any disability?
Well, for me personally, one of my biggest challenges was, comprehending verbal language when it came to understanding complex conversations, whether if it's hanging out with friends or with family members. When I was a child growing up, my language was a little bit delayed in certain areas, but I was placed in a special ed program when I was when I was in elementary school, even a little bit in high school, and so I had extra supports from my family and teachers. They trained me a lot more on my focusing, my learning strategy, my learning style, and my conversation social skills.
Right.
But one of the biggest challenges was comprehending verbal instructions, like being at a job, because I tend to get confused very easily, and simple little things can distract me, little things like that.
Yeah.
Or if I had to deal with something like if I got into a disagreement or a confrontation with someone, sometimes like negative thoughts. Sometimes I would sort of tend to assess on them, but as I got older, I just learned to brush things off and just sort of let things go.
I think the best thing in life is to not brush things off, but let things go sometimes,
Well, like letting things go, that's very, very important. But what I mean by brush things off, for example, like if you're in a situation where you're on your way to work, or if you accidentally bump into someone.
Right.
And you know, sometimes like they'll look at you, and then you know they'll kind of give you sort of a rude response, or
Right.
you know, they may
Exactly,
not be the most
polite.
they may not be the most polite,
Exactly.
pleasing mood.
Right.
But little things like that, you just kind of have to say, okay, whatever, and,
Right.
and brush it off. That's what
And
I
life
mean.
goes on. David,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
I had fun.
This is Matteo Esposito for In the Loop Media.
So if you're interested in coming to any of my events, I'll be doing live caricature drawings at the Toronto Busker Festival in September for the long Labor Day weekend. So please feel free to check out my web links at any time.